My name is Lily Harper. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of how I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean weakness. It means choosing peace when the world gives you every reason to hate. If you enjoy true-to-life stories like mine, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. The day my parents told me they couldn't help save my son's life was cold, though spring was technically in the air. I remember because the sky over Columbus, Ohio was this dull, endless gray, the kind that turns every window reflection into a mirror, forcing you to look at yourself even when you don't want to. I stood by my kitchen table, surrounded by bills, hospital forms, loan applications, medical reports, all laid out like crime scene evidence. The oxygen machine hummed softly from the next room where my 6-year-old son, Caleb, was sleeping. Even in sleep, his breathing sounded uneven, shallow. It tore at me. The specialist had said the treatment, an experimental procedure done out of state, could change everything. But it came with a price tag of $85,000. That number haunted me. I could almost hear it echoing every time I tried to fall asleep. $85,000. My salary as a middle school science teacher barely covered rent and insurance, let alone something that enormous. I'd maxed out credit cards, taken personal loans, applied for every assistance program I could find. Nothing came close. So, as a last resort, I called my parents. They arrived together that afternoon. My father wore the same navy blazer he wore to church and client meetings, even though this wasn't either. He stood near the door with his arms crossed, his expression tight. My mother, Karen, moved more gently, but with that practiced politeness she reserved for unpleasant tasks. "We don't have that kind of money lying around," my father said finally. His voice was calm, businesslike. "Lily, you need to be realistic." My throat felt dry. "Dad, he's your grandson. He's 6. If we can't get him the treatment, the doctor said he won't make it to next year." My mother reached out, touching my father's sleeve, the way she always did when she wanted to soften his tone without actually disagreeing. "Honey," she said, "we've already helped you so much over the years. The surgeries, the medical bills, that time we helped with your rent after Ethan left. We just can't keep emptying our retirement." "I'm not asking you to empty it," I said, my voice cracking. "Just loan it, please. I'll pay you back. I'll work 2 jobs. Lily," my father interrupted gently but firmly. "You can barely keep up with your job now. We're thinking about your future, too. How would you ever pay us back?" "I'd find a way," I blurted, louder than I meant to. Caleb stirred faintly in the next room. I lowered my voice. "Please, you don't understand. I've tried everything." "You haven't tried financing plans?" he asked, like that was the solution to all problems, or a hospital charity program. "They take too long," I whispered. "We don't have time." My father's expression didn't change. My mother gave me that sad, sympathetic look that somehow made it worse. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "We just can't do this. You have to understand, we're not young anymore." They left soon after. My mother hugged me at the door, her perfume lingering long after she was gone. I stood by the window, watching their car drive away until it disappeared around the corner. I remember thinking how strange it was that the world outside looked so normal when mine had just been rearranged into something unrecognizable. That night, I sat beside Caleb's bed and watched him sleep. The machine hissed softly, oxygen flowing through thin plastic tubes. His little chest rose and fell like the wings of a bird too tired to fly. He opened his eyes halfway. "Mom?" "I'm here, baby," I said quickly, brushing his hair back. "Did Grandpa say he'd help?" I froze. I told him we were asking Grandpa for help. I couldn't tell him the truth. "He said he's thinking about it," I said finally. "We'll figure something out." He smiled faintly, his eyelids drooping again. I knew he would. When he fell back asleep, I went into the living room and cried until there was nothing left. A week later, I launched a GoFundMe campaign. I wrote for hours, carefully choosing words that would make strangers care. My name is Lily Harper. My son Caleb was born with a congenital heart condition that's worsening despite treatment. I attached photos of him smiling, holding his toy rocket, sitting in a hospital bed with his ever-present dinosaur blanket. The donations trickled in. $20 from a coworker, $50 from a parent of one of my students, $100 from someone anonymous. Within 2 weeks, I had raised a little over $9,000. I was grateful, but it felt like trying to bail water from a sinking ship with a teacup. I kept teaching during the day, tutoring online at night, and making calls to every charity I could find during lunch breaks. Still, the math didn't add up. 85,000 was a mountain, and I was one woman with a shovel. Then, one evening, my sister Emily called. Her voice was bright, practically glowing through the phone. "Lily, oh my God, Ryan proposed." I smiled instinctively. "That's great, Em. Congratulations. I know, right?" It finally happened. Mom and Dad are over the moon. They said they're covering everything. Like, literally everything. I hesitated. Everything? Yeah. The venue, dress, catering, the works. Mom said it's the least they can do for their baby girl. She laughed. I think Dad said the budget was, well, no budget. Can you believe it? I swallowed hard. That's generous, totally. We're thinking Napa Valley or maybe Italy. Ryan's parents love the idea of a destination wedding. I tried to sound enthusiastic. Sounds amazing, she giggled. Anyway, how's Caleb? Is he doing better? He's hanging in there, I said quietly. Still on the wait list for the treatment. Oh, right. I'll say a prayer for him, she said quickly, then launched into details about dress fittings and floral themes. When the call ended, I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. No budget. My parents, who had told me to be realistic, were now spending 6 figures on a wedding. That night, something in me shifted. Not just anger. Something colder, sharper. Clarity. Summer came, and the air in Columbus grew thick with humidity and hopelessness. Caleb's condition worsened. His energy faded. He couldn't run anymore, couldn't climb the playground slide he used to love. But he still smiled. He always smiled. I tried to stay strong around him. I'd sing while cooking, old songs my mom used to hum when I was little. I'd pack tiny lunches for hospital days and pretend we were going on adventures, but inside I was hollow. By August, I had raised $12,400. It wasn't even enough for the deposit. That same week, Emily posted engagement photos on social media. She stood in a vineyard, sunlight spilling across her white dress, her ring sparkling like something out of a magazine. The caption read, "Forever starts now. So grateful for my amazing parents for making this dream possible." I stared at that sentence for a long time. So grateful for my amazing parents. I closed the app and cried until my chest hurt. In late September, Caleb had another collapse. I rushed him to the ER, where the doctors stabilized him again. Dr. Patel met me in the hallway, her face drawn. "Lily," she said, "we're running out of time. His heart is weakening faster than expected. If we don't get that treatment soon..." Her voice trailed off. She didn't need to finish. I knew. That night, when I got home, the answering machine was blinking. It was my mother's voice. "Hi, honey. It's Mom. Just calling about Emily's bridesmaid dresses. She'd really love you to be part of the wedding. They're only about $300, and we need your measurements by next week. $300. For a dress." I deleted the message without replying. The following weeks were a blur of exhaustion and fear. I taught through the day on autopilot, smiled through parent-teacher conferences, and then raced to the hospital every evening. I watched Caleb fade, not in spirit, but in body. His questions about space grew quieter, shorter. He stopped asking when he could go home. One night, as I read him Goodnight Moon, he reached out and touched my face. "Mom," he whispered, "you look sad." "I'm okay, baby." "You're not, but it's okay." "I'm okay." His words hit me like lightning, gentle and devastating all at once. He was 6 years old, and he was comforting me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the chair by Caleb's bed, counting the rhythm of his breaths and the soft hiss of the oxygen like I was keeping time for something I couldn't control. Around 3 a.m., a nurse named Janelle brought me a blanket and a cup of tea she wasn't supposed to give to patients' families. She had kind eyes and a tired smile that said she'd made this gesture 100 times before. "Try to lie down," she whispered. "Even 20 minutes helps." I nodded, but the chair felt like it had teeth. Rest meant surrendering the vigil, and I couldn't do that. Not when the only thing I could offer my son was my presence. At dawn, the city outside the window went from black to a bruised purple. The skeleton of a leafless tree moved against the glass like a metronome. Columbus woke up early. Delivery trucks, a cyclist, a few people with coffee cups hurrying by. I thought about the hundreds of families inside this building at any given hour, each of us a quiet world of fear behind a door. At 7, I texted my principal, Mr. Voss, at the hospital again. "I'll be out today. I'll post subplans by 8. He replied within a minute. "Don't worry about plans. I'll cover your classes. Focus on Caleb." I stared at the phone. Mr. Voss was not a warm man, but he was steady. In crisis, steadiness is a kind of love. By 9, Caleb was awake. He smiled, a small, careful smile that reminded me how strong he was. I read to him from a book about the solar system. He interrupted every few lines with questions that were at once hopeful and heartbreakingly wise. "Are stars noisy up close?" "They're loud in a way," I said. "But space is so big the sound doesn't travel like it does here." "So if I visited one, could I still hear you?" "Yes," I said, swallowing. "Always." He seemed satisfied. He liked answers with certainty. Most children do. Most adults do too. We just learn to pretend otherwise. Around lunchtime, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "How is he today?" she asked. "Stable," I said. "They're adjusting his medications." "That's good," she said. "Listen, honey, I'm calling because Emily needs your confirmation about the rehearsal dinner. They're planning the seating chart." I closed my eyes. "Mom, I told you, I can't commit to any of that right now." "Well, it's just one evening. You could ask a neighbor to sit with him, or maybe the hospital offers—" "Mom," I said softly, "please stop." Silence stretched out. Then her voice changed, gentler but somehow more remote. "I worry about you," she said. "You don't have to make everything about this, Lily. Life has to go on." "For who?" I asked. "For you? For Emily? Because we're still here in this room." "I didn't mean it like that," she said quickly. "We're praying, prayer. Such a small word. Sometimes it's a balm. Other times it feels like a receipt handed to you where an apology should be." After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap and breathed through the familiar ache behind my ribs. A few minutes later, Caleb said, "Mom." "Yeah, buddy?" "Do you think heaven has hikes like in Hocking Hills?" I smiled. "I think it has whatever you love most. Then I think it has the big rock bridge. And you can sit right on it and it's not scary. We love that bridge," I said. "You were so brave up there." "You held my hand," he said. "So I wasn't that brave." "You were exactly brave enough," I said. He nodded, satisfied again, and went back to coloring a planet purple because, he said, we haven't discovered that one yet. In the afternoon, my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, stopped by with a bag from a deli, sandwiches, chips, little juice boxes. Her daughter, Marisol, had been in my third period class years ago. The family checked on us like clockwork. If generosity had weight, their kindness could have tipped the scale. "I don't know what to say," Mrs. Alvarez whispered, setting the bag on the windowsill. "So I brought food and quiet. That's perfect," I said, tears stinging my eyes. She hugged me with one arm, the perfect hug for a person who might break if held too tightly, and left us with chicken soup and fresh fruit. Caleb waved with the hand that wasn't tangled in tubing. "Gracias," he said solemnly, and she blew him a kiss. That evening, I logged into the crowdfunding page to post an update. I tried to thread an impossible needle, honest but hopeful, clear but not desperate. "Caleb is stable today," I wrote. "We're still moving toward the treatment, and your messages keep us going. Thank you for every share, every dollar, and every word of support." Within an hour, there were 20 comments. A former classmate I hadn't seen in a decade donated $50. One of my students' grandparents sent $100 and wrote, "We're rooting for Caleb from Dayton." It was a quiet chorus of strangers, and not quite strangers, saying, "We see you. You are not alone." And yet, night was what it was. Long, slow, and honest. A week later, we were home again. The apartment smelled like lemons from the cleaner Mrs. Alvarez insisted on using whenever she borrowed my keys to help. I tucked Caleb into his bed and sat on the floor beside him, resting my head on the mattress. He fell asleep quickly, Hospitals are noisy, and home, even a small one, is quiet in a way that lets children rest. When the apartment was still, I called my sister. "I need to ask you something," I said when she answered. "What's up?" Emily said. Her voice had the cheerful speed of a person perpetually running late to good news. "Mom said they're paying for everything. For the wedding, well, yeah," she said cautiously. "It's their gift. How much are we talking about?" I asked, and the question tasted as bitter as I expected. She sighed. "Lily, I don't want this to turn into, you know." "I do know," I said gently. "Please, I just need the truth." A pause. Then, "Dad told me not to share numbers," she admitted. "But it's a lot. More than 100, maybe double." The phone felt heavier in my hand. "So there is a number," I said. "For things that matter." "That's not fair," she said, her voice sharpening. "This is my wedding. It's once in a lifetime." "So is a childhood," I said. Silence grew roots between us. "Ryan's parents are helping too," she said quietly, as if that made it better. "It's not like Mom and Dad are doing it all." "Emily," I said, my voice steady. "If I had $85,000 tomorrow, Caleb could get the treatment next month." She inhaled sharply. "I didn't know it was that exact. It's that exact." "I'm sorry," she said, and I believe she meant it even if she didn't understand it. "I don't know what to do." "You could talk to them," I said. "You could ask them to split it. A wedding can be smaller. A life can't. I'll try," she said. "I promise I'll try." I wanted to believe her. I did. I wanted to believe that sibling love could cross the river money built. 2 days later, she texted, "I talked to them. They said it wouldn't be responsible to change your financial planning. They said they've helped a lot already. I'm so sorry, Lily. Please don't be mad at me." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. I put down the phone and went into the kitchen and washed dishes that were already clean, just to feel my hands do something useful. That night, Caleb woke around 2 with a small, breathless cough that made fear shoot through me like electricity. I held him upright, rubbed his back, and hummed the first song that came to mind, an old lullaby my mother used to sing when I was little. The melody was muscle memory, bittersweet and automatic. "You sound sad when you sing that," he murmured when his breathing settled. "I'll pick a happy one next time," I said, trying to smile. "I like this one," he said, leaning against me. "It sounds like the part in a movie when something good is going to happen, but the people don't know yet." "Maybe that's today," I said. "Maybe something good already started and we just haven't seen it." He nodded, eyes half closed. "Like when seeds are under the dirt," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "Exactly like that." The next morning, I went back to work for the first time in a week. I needed the rhythm of 7th grade chaos. The pencil sharpeners, the announcements about the lost hoodie in the cafeteria, the chorus of, "Do we need to write this down?" when I'd already answered the question twice. Before first period, a group of teachers gathered near the coffee machine. Nora, our art teacher, pressed a coffee into my hand without asking. "You don't drink enough water," she said, as if caffeinated kindness could be a fix. It couldn't, but it made me feel seen. After school, I picked up Caleb from the hospital's daycare program, where he'd spent an hour while I met with Dr. Patel. He was wearing a sticker that said I was brave today. He wore it like a medal. In the car, he asked, "Can we drive by the library? I want a new space book." "Yes," I said, and for 10 minutes we lived a normal afternoon. We parked in the lot, walked past the community bulletin board, knitting class, free tax prep, a flyer for a holiday toy drive, and went straight to the children's corner, where a little boy was building a tower of foam blocks and singing under his breath. Caleb picked a book about exoplanets and sat cross-legged on the carpet. He looked so small and so focused that the librarian, Mr. Fields, brought over a star chart and gave it to him as a special loan. He winked at me. I tucked the chart into my tote like something sacred. There are days you forget you're standing on a cliff. The trick is to let those hours be what they are, grace, without needing them to be forever. A week later, Emily called with what she labeled good news. "I convinced Mom to cover your bridesmaid dress," she said, triumphant. "That's not what I asked for," I said. "It's something," she said quickly. "And the hair and makeup team can squeeze you in?" "Emily," I said, carefully keeping my voice even. "I can't leave Caleb for a full day of hair and makeup." "You could bring him. It's a hotel spa. There's a lounge." "He can't sit around a spa all day," I said. "He gets tired. He needs quiet." She exhaled, the sound of someone whose idea of generosity has been misunderstood. "I'm trying," she said. "It feels like nothing I do is right." "Then listen to me," I said gently. "It would be right to scale this down and help him." There was a long, long pause. "I can't ask them to do that," she said finally, voice small. "Everything's already set." "Things that are set can be unset," I said. But we were on different roads now, and the exits no longer lined up. November arrived on a wind that lifted the last leaves and sent them tumbling across sidewalks like notes nobody wanted to read. Caleb's numbers slipped. The numbers become their own weather: oxygen saturation, heart rate, blood pressure. You learn their landscape like you learn the moods of a person you love. One afternoon, after a difficult appointment, I drove without thinking to the little church where I used to go as a kid. I parked, sat in the quiet car, and didn't go in. Faith is complicated when you've been told your life is a test you didn't study for. I didn't ask for miracles. I asked for something smaller and stranger. I asked to be strong enough to do what love required, whatever that ended up being. At home, I updated the crowdfunding page again. Donations had slowed. It's the nature of the internet. New heartbreaks arrive on every feed and the world's attention moves like a tide. We hovered at just under 13,000. I wrote and deleted and rewrote until the truth fit on the page without bleeding. That weekend, Mrs. Alvarez hosted a small yard sale and insisted on giving me a thick envelope afterward. "Neighbors bought things they didn't need," she said, proud. "People like to help if you give them away." Inside, $600 in small bills. It felt like a miracle in human scale. I hugged her and her husband and Marisol, then cried in my kitchen where no one could see me. The next morning, my father stopped by unannounced. He'd never been an unannounced person. It startled me to see him in my doorway at 8 a.m., coat collar up against the cold. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped aside. He scanned the apartment quickly, cataloging the absence, as if he could see what I'd sold and what I'd kept. He didn't sit. He held his hands behind his back like he was waiting to testify. "I wanted to check in," he said. "See how things are." "We're here," I said. "We're doing what we can." He nodded, eyes flicking toward the closed door of Caleb's room. "I stopped by to give you this," he said, and handed me an envelope. Inside was a check, $2,000. I stared at it like I didn't know what paper was. "I know it's not enough," he said quickly, "but it's what I can do now." I looked at him, at the way his jaw worked like he was chewing on something he couldn't swallow. "Thank you," I said, because it was something. Because it cost him something. If not money, then ego. It helps. "I wish it could be more," he said, eyes shining in a way I hadn't seen since I was little. "I wish a lot of things." "Me too," I said. He left without asking for a hug. Maybe we both knew we weren't those people anymore. Maybe we never had been. The wedding invitations arrived the following Tuesday. Heavy cardstock, gold embossed, a sprig of pressed something or other tucked into the envelope like a promise. I held it and thought about the difference between ceremony and sacrament. One is lined up months in advance. The other arrives whenever it wants and leaves you changed. I didn't RSVP. A few days before Thanksgiving, Emily called from a cake tasting. I could hear laughter and the clink of dishes in the background. "I wish you were here," she said. "They have a salted caramel that's ridiculous." "I wish I were too," I said, and for a second, I did. I wished to be in a room where the biggest problem was picking a flavor. "How are you otherwise?" "Busy, it's a lot, but worth it." She hesitated. "How's he?" "Sleepy," I said. "But he liked your last video of the dog in a bow tie. He asked if dogs wear suits to weddings." She laughed softly. "Tell him they do. Tell him they're the best-dressed guests." "I will," I said. "And Emily? Yeah?" "Thank you for trying," I said. because I believe she had tried within the limits of what she could imagine bending. I know it wasn't simple. "It should have been," she whispered, and the background noise dimmed as if she'd stepped into a hallway. "It should have been you ask, and we say yes." I closed my eyes. There it was, the sentence I'd been aching to hear from someone in my family. "Yeah," I said. "It should have." We hung up before either of us said something we'd regret, or promised something we couldn't deliver. At school, December arrived with paper snowflakes on the hallway corkboards and a flurry of orchestra concerts. I stood in the back of the auditorium as my students played something simple and sweet, and I cried in a way that didn't draw attention. Teachers get good at that, the quiet, functional cry no one sees. The next morning, Dr. Patel called early. "There's a window," she said. "A team in Chicago has an opening in 2 weeks. They reviewed Caleb's case and he qualifies." I sank onto the couch. 2 weeks, I repeated. "It's not a guarantee," she cautioned. "But it's the best shot we've had." I thanked her, hung up, and did the math. We needed $85,000. We had $13,740. Sellable items, none. Borrowable money, unlikely. Time, measured in sleeps. I recorded a video for the crowdfunding page. I did not put on makeup or fix the lighting. I spoke plainly. I said my son's name in the first sentence. I said the word chance several times because it was the point. I said 2 weeks twice, because urgency is an engine. I asked for shares, even if people couldn't give. I asked without shame. The video reached more people than I expected. Small donations poured in from places I'd never been. Idaho, Vermont, a town in Alabama I had to look up on a map. A former student wrote, "Miss Harper always believed in me. Help me help her son." A local news blog shared the page. We crossed 15,000, then 19, then 22. It felt possible in the way that rain clouds feel like they might turn into snow if you wish hard enough. And then, 3 days before Emily's wedding, Caleb's numbers dipped like a roller coaster that had lost power mid-descent. We spent that night in the pediatric ICU, machines mapping his life in green and blue lines across a screen. I dozed in the chair with my hand wrapped in his, waking every time a monitor made a new sound. At 4 a.m., Dr. Patel came in and sat on the edge of the chair next to me. "Lily," she said, and the way she said my name told me to brace. "He's tired," I nodded. "I know. We'll do everything to keep him comfortable. If he rallies, we'll try again, but I want you to know it's okay to shift our focus. From getting him there," I said, voice thread thin, "to being here." She nodded. I looked at him. The way his lashes lay against his cheeks, the way his hand was still small enough to disappear inside mine. I thought about the purple planet he'd drawn. I thought about the seed under the dirt. "Okay," I whispered. At sunrise, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. "We're leaving for Italy today. We'll FaceTime from the welcome dinner. Love you." I turned off the phone and slipped it into my bag. An hour later, Emily called from the airport. I let it ring. Then she texted, "I know." "I'm sorry." I typed, "I know too," and put the phone away for good. Around noon, Caleb woke and asked for the star chart. I spread it across the blanket, and we picked our favorite constellations. He put his finger on Orion and said, "That one looks like it's trying to be brave, even if it's scared." "Like someone we know," I said, tracing the belt stars with the tip of my nail. He smiled. "Like you," he said. We spent the afternoon in a bubble where time was elastic and gentle. Nurses came and went like silent guardians. A volunteer with a guitar sang, "You Are My Sunshine," in a voice just above a whisper. The world outside narrowed to a room, a chart, a small hand in mine. In the evening, the hospital chaplain, Reverend Cole, a woman with silver hair and a plaid scarf, stepped in. She didn't ask about faith or offer cliches. She sat and asked about stories. "Tell me about a day you loved with him," she said. I told her about the time we got lost in Hocking Hills and found the trail only by following the sound of water. I told her about his first snow day, and how he'd insisted snow tasted like the sky. As I spoke, I felt warmth. Memory is a heater when the room is cold. Later, when the lights dimmed and the hallways quieted, Caleb whispered, "Mom, right here. Will you still talk to me if you can't see me?" "Always," I said. "You won't be able to shut me up." He grinned, and that grin, I think, will anchor me forever. By midnight, he slept. I sat with the star chart wrapped around my shoulders like a cape, the way he used to wear it. I watched the monitor and then I watched him instead, because that was the truer measure. Somewhere past 2, the rhythm changed. Nurses were in the room quickly, their movements kind but final. Dr. Patel put a hand on my shoulder and said my name again. The world contracted to one point of light, and then widened so suddenly it made me dizzy. I held his hand through the stillness. I spoke into his hair. I told him the story of the brave constellation. I told him about seeds. I told him about bridges made of rock that aren't scary at all. When the room finally settled, Reverend Cole returned and sat in the dark with me. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. We stayed like that for a long time, 2 people at the edge of a new map. Just before dawn, I stepped into the hallway to call my parents. My mother answered on the first ring. "Lily, we just landed." "Mom," I said. "He's gone." There was a small sound, like a glass setting down on a table. Then, oh, Lily, what terrible timing. I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said. "The worst." "We'll come as soon as we can," she said, voice shaky. "The welcome dinner is tonight, but maybe tomorrow. Do what you need to do," I said. "We'll be here." When I hung up, Emily's name was already flashing on the screen. I answered. She was crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry." "Me too," I said. "I'll come home," she said. "You don't have to," I said, and the words surprised me by being true. "Just remember him. That's the part that matters now." When I returned to the room, a nurse had placed a soft blue quilt over Caleb. She looked at me like people look at the ocean, with humility and awe and a little fear. "We can give you as much time as you need," she said. I nodded. Time suddenly was all we had. As dawn broke across the hospital campus, painting the brick buildings pink and gold, I whispered the lullaby again, the one that sounded like a promise you can keep. And for the first time in months, I was not afraid of the quiet. The next few days unfolded like a movie played on mute. I remember the shapes of things more than the sounds, the forms, the hospital corridors, the way light hit the linoleum. Grief does that. It compresses time, mutes color. I went through motions that didn't feel like mine. Signatures, forms, quiet thank yous to nurses who had become family. They gave me a small white box containing Caleb's drawings, a photograph from his last birthday, and the purple crayon planet he'd invented. I carried it pressed to my chest like something living. When I walked out of the hospital for the last time, the cold hit me like a wall. The air outside was cruelly fresh. I stood there for a long time in the parking lot, trying to remember how to move in a world that no longer contained my son. The funeral was set for Friday. My Aunt Diane helped with arrangements because I couldn't bring myself to compare casket prices or flower options. My parents insisted on a service at the church we'd gone to as kids. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. My mother called on Wednesday evening. Her voice was soft, but I could hear the tension underneath. "Sweetheart, we have a problem," she began. "What kind of problem?" "Well, Friday is difficult. The wedding rehearsal is that afternoon, and the dinner afterward. We were wondering if we might move the service to Thursday. It would make things easier for everyone. The word hung there like smoke. "You want me to move my son's funeral?" I said slowly. "So it doesn't interfere with a party?" She flinched audibly through the phone. "It's not like that, Lily. We're just trying to manage both things. People have already flown in for Emily's wedding. Then they can stay a little longer," I said. "The funeral stays Friday." "Lily," I said Friday. I repeated and hung up. That night, I sat on the floor of Caleb's room surrounded by his toys. His little astronaut helmet, his Lego rockets, his books. The smell of his shampoo still clung to the pillow. I closed my eyes and breathed it in until it hurt. Friday came gray and damp. The service was small, just a few teachers, neighbors, my Aunt Diane, and some of my students' parents who'd known Caleb. I'd asked the pastor to keep it simple. No platitudes, no promises. Just his name, spoken with love. My parents arrived 40 minutes late, wearing matching black coats and polite grief. My mother cried softly during the eulogy but didn't speak to me. My father stood stiffly beside her, as if holding himself together with threads. They left right after the service, citing commitments. My Aunt Diane stayed behind to help me gather Caleb's drawings from the display table. She looked at me and shook her head. "I don't know what's wrong with them," she said. "You deserved better. Caleb deserved better." I didn't answer. The truth was too large for words. Saturday, the day before Emily's wedding, I stayed home. The house was full of silence that no amount of music could cover. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the rattle of the heater, felt foreign. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with messages from relatives, most of whom hadn't been at the funeral. "Thinking of you. So sorry for your loss. What a beautiful service." Then came one from my mother. "Wish you could be here tomorrow. Emily looks radiant." I stared at that message for a long time. Wish you could be here. As if the only thing keeping me away was scheduling. As if I had chosen not to attend out of disinterest. I deleted the text. The next day, Sunday, the wedding day, I woke before dawn. The world outside was still dark, quiet. I made coffee I didn't drink, sat on the couch with Caleb's star chart draped across my knees, and watched the first hints of sunrise spill across the windowsill. My phone lit up periodically with photos. Emily in her gown, my parents smiling, the vineyard bathed in golden light. They looked like an ad for happiness, the kind of curated joy that filters out pain and poverty and everything that doesn't sparkle. I scrolled through each image slowly, detached. My father's tuxedo cost more than my rent. My mother's dress looked like it came from a boutique catalog. The cake, tall and tiered, stood against a backdrop of vines and fairy lights. In one photo, my parents were dancing, smiling, holding champagne flutes. The caption read, "The happiest day of our lives. So blessed." I set the phone down and exhaled. There was no anger, not anymore. Just an emptiness so wide it felt like standing in space. For weeks afterward, I drifted. I went through the motions, teaching, grocery shopping, sleeping in fragments. The grief wasn't loud, it was heavy, like wearing a coat you can't take off. My parents called occasionally, but the conversations were brief, shallow. My mother spoke mostly about Emily and her new husband, Ryan. Their honeymoon, their new house, their plans for children. Once, she said, "You should think about moving on too. Caleb wouldn't want you to be sad forever." I didn't respond. Some silences protect what little is left of you. 3 months later, in early spring, Emily called for the first time since the funeral. "I've been thinking about you," she said. "I know it's been hard." "Hard," I echoed, my voice flat. She hesitated. "I wanted to send you something. We had a photographer at the wedding who took a really nice picture of all of us. I thought you might want a copy." I closed my eyes. "Emily, please don't." "Why not?" she asked, genuinely confused. "Because it's not a picture I was in," I said quietly. "Because it was taken 2 days after I buried my son." She was silent for a long time. "I didn't think of it like that," she said finally. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." Time moved like thick syrup after that. Days blending into weeks. I started therapy, went to a support group at the hospital once a week. At first, I barely spoke. I just listened to other parents tell their stories. Different faces, same grief. One father said, "The hardest part isn't the loss. It's the world continuing like nothing happened." That line stayed with me. I poured myself into work. I started an after-school science club in Caleb's memory. We built paper rockets and launched them from the football field. The first time one actually flew more than 20 feet. The kids cheered like they'd touched the moon. I smiled for real that day, the first time in months. Years passed quietly. I moved to a smaller town outside Columbus, became an assistant principal. The apartment grew brighter, warmer. I filled it with plants and secondhand furniture, and a shelf of children's books I couldn't bear to give away. My parents didn't visit. They sent holiday cards, each one stiff and formal. Emily had 2 children by then, and I sent gifts I could afford. Puzzle sets, storybooks. She texted thank yous, nothing more. Grief faded, but memory didn't. I learned to live alongside it, like sharing a room with a ghost who only sometimes speaks. 4 years after Caleb's death, I got a call from my father. "Lily," he began awkwardly, "we wanted to tell you. Your mother's not well. She's been diagnosed with heart disease." I froze. "How bad?" "It's serious," he admitted. "She'll need treatment, and we're struggling financially. I lost a big part of my retirement in that investment deal that went south." "I'm sorry," I said honestly. He hesitated. "We were hoping you might be able to help. Maybe a small loan." For a moment I couldn't speak. The irony was almost unbearable. I thought of the day I'd begged them for the same thing, for my child's life, and been told to be realistic. "Dad," I said finally, my voice even, "I can't give you money. But I can visit. I can help around the house. I can drive her to appointments." He sighed. "We were hoping for something more tangible." "I know," I said, "but this is what I can give." There was silence. Then quietly, "Thank you." The first time I saw my mother again was in the hospital. She looked smaller, fragile in a way that felt unfamiliar. Her face was pale, but her eyes, those sharp, assessing eyes, were softer. "Lily," she whispered when I walked in. "You came." "I did," I said, setting flowers on the table. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," she said. Then, after a pause, "I didn't think you'd come." "I didn't either," I said honestly. She smiled weakly. "I'm glad you did." For the next few weeks, I visited often. I brought her books, tea, and homemade soup she barely touched. We spoke in half steps, safe topics at first. Weather, old family recipes, the school where I worked. Slowly, other things surfaced. One afternoon, as the rain pattered softly outside, she said, "I think about him every day." I looked up. "Caleb?" She nodded, tears welling. "I should have been there. I should have helped." The words came haltingly, as if she had rehearsed them for years. "Your father and I were selfish. We told ourselves it was practical, that it wouldn't have changed anything. But it was cowardice." I felt something loosen in my chest. "You can't change it now," I said quietly. "But you can remember him." "I do," she said, "every night." And for the first time, I believed her. By the time spring came, she was weaker. My father called me one morning, voice trembling. "She's asking for you." I went straight to the hospital. She smiled faintly when I entered, motioning for me to sit. "I wanted to tell you something before I can't," she whispered. "I thought love was something you could measure in money or comfort. I was wrong. It's what you do when it's hard. You did that. You loved right." Her hand was cold in mine. I squeezed it gently. "I learned from your mistakes," I said softly. The summer after my mother's passing was strangely gentle. Columbus had one of those rare warm seasons that made the city look forgiving again, the kind where trees seemed to exhale and children's laughter drifted from open windows. I spent those months learning to live inside quiet spaces. Every Sunday I went to my father's house. The first few times it felt awkward, like visiting a stranger's home that just happened to look familiar. The walls were still covered in family photos. My mother in her garden, Emily holding her newborn, even one of Caleb at age 3, sitting on his grandfather's shoulders. That one nearly broke me the first time I saw it. "I found that in one of your mother's albums," my father said quietly. "She kept it all this time." I traced the photo's edge with my thumb. "He loved being up there. He thought you were as tall as a mountain." My father smiled faintly. "He was a good kid." "Yeah," I said. "The best." We didn't talk about the past that day. We just sat in the living room drinking tea. The silence between us no longer hostile, just tired. As months passed, our talks deepened. My father started telling stories about his own childhood, how he used to fix radios with his grandfather, how he'd wanted to study architecture before taking over the family business. I realized for the first time how narrow his life had been, how much of it had been built around expectations. He'd been raised to measure success in numbers, not relationships. "Dad," I asked once, "did you ever want to do something just for love? Not for gain?" He looked at me, eyes thoughtful. "I used to build model planes when I was a kid," he said. "Your grandmother called them a waste of time. Said I should study something that paid the bills." I stopped. "That's sad," I said softly. He nodded. That's life. Or at least, that's what I thought. We sat there in silence for a while. Then he added, You know, I think you were right. About love, about what it means to do the hard thing. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That autumn, I received an invitation in the mail. Emily's family Christmas gathering. The card was tasteful, silver-embossed snowflakes. The words "Together Again" printed in delicate script. I placed it on the table and stared at it for a long time. Later that week, I mentioned it to my father. She sent me one too, he said. Are you going? He hesitated. I don't know if she really wants me there, or if it's just habit. I think she wants to try, I said. He looked at me. And you? I shrugged. I'm not sure, but maybe trying is enough for now. When December came, I went. Not because I felt ready, but because forgiveness doesn't wait for readiness. It just asks for willingness. Emily's house was big and bright, full of the kind of laughter that used to make me ache. Her 2 children ran to greet me the moment I stepped inside. The older one, Sophie, maybe 5 or 6, held up a picture she'd drawn. Mom said you're the one who likes stars. I smiled. I do, and that's a beautiful one. It's not just a star, she said proudly. It's a whole galaxy. Something in me loosened. Then it's perfect. Emily appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She looked older, not in years, but in the way sorrow matures you. Her smile was nervous. Hey, I echoed. For a long moment, we just stood there, both unsure whether to hug or apologize first. Then she stepped forward, and I met her halfway. I wasn't sure you'd come, she whispered. I wasn't either, I said. We pulled back. There was so much between us. Years of silence, misjudgment, missed chances, but also something still alive. The small thread of sisterhood that refused to die completely. Dinner's almost ready, she said. I made your favorite sweet potato casserole. You used to fight me for the topping. I laughed softly. Still will. That broke the ice. Dinner was simple, warm, and unexpectedly easy. My father sat beside Emily's husband, Ryan, discussing sports like old friends. The children performed a holiday play in the living room, half-forgotten lines and all. I watched them twirl in their mismatched costumes, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost in the room. After dinner, Emily and I stepped outside. Snow had begun to fall, the world soft and quiet under its weight. I think about that year all the time, she said finally. About what I did, or didn't do. I didn't answer right away. The snow settled gently in her hair, catching the porch light. I didn't understand what you were going through, she continued. I was so wrapped up in my own life, my own happiness. I thought love was making things beautiful. You showed me that it's standing in the mess and not walking away. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, Lily, I can't ever undo it. But I want to be your sister again. Not the version that hurt you. The one who knows better. I looked at her, my chest tight. I forgave you a long time ago, I said softly. I just didn't know how to say it without crying. We both laughed, half tears, half relief. She reached for my hand. I let her hold it. That moment didn't erase the past, but it changed the future. Over the next few years, the fractures in our family slowly mended. They never disappeared, but the edges grew smoother. I visited Emily's kids often. My father came to the school science fairs, bringing cookies and bragging about his daughter, the principal. He even started building model airplanes again. One afternoon, while visiting him, I found a half-finished one on the kitchen table. The pieces were neatly arranged, and a small note sat beside it. For Caleb, reaching higher this time. I stood there for a long moment, my throat tightening. It wasn't an apology, but it was something truer. A quiet act of remembrance. Years passed. Seasons came and went. I watched Emily's children grow, my students graduate, my father grow older. I never remarried. Though I dated a few kind men who understood that my heart had a permanent room reserved for someone no longer here. Every year on Caleb's birthday, I visited the little park near my apartment, the one with the small hill he used to roll down laughing. I brought a single balloon and the old star chart, now faded at the edges. I'd sit on the bench and tell him about my week, my students, his cousins, his grandfather's new hobby. One year, Sophie came with me. She was 9 by then, curious and gentle. "Aunt Lily," she asked, "do you think Caleb knows you're here?" I smiled. "I think he does. And I think he's proud." She looked up at the sky. "Mom says when people love each other really big, it doesn't stop. It just changes shape." I nodded. "That's exactly right." We released the balloon together, watching it drift upward until it vanished into the blue. A few months later, my father passed quietly in his sleep. Emily called me in tears, and I went to her house that night. She clung to me at the door, whispering, "He asked for you before he went to bed. Said you were his compass." At the funeral, I stood at the podium and told a story I hadn't told before, about the model planes, about the picture he'd kept of Caleb on his shoulders, about how even people who make terrible choices are still capable of grace. After the service, I slipped the small model airplane he'd finished into his casket. "You made it, Dad," I whispered. "You finally learned to fly." In the years that followed, peace became less a destination and more a rhythm, a daily choice. I kept teaching, mentoring new educators, helping students who reminded me of Caleb, curious, kind, endlessly questioning. Sometimes, when the classroom was quiet after the last bell, I'd look out at the sunset spilling through the windows and feel him there. Not as a ghost, but as light. It's been 12 years now since that first impossible day. The day my parents stood in my kitchen and told me no. I used to replay it in my mind, searching for ways it could have gone differently. But time has a way of softening even the hardest scenes. Now, when I think of my family, I don't see the wedding or the hospital. I see the small moments that came after. My mother's trembling apology, my father's model plane, Emily's hand in mine under the falling snow. We were all broken, but we found a way to build something from the pieces, not the family we used to be. Something quieter, humbler, real. Sometimes I still dream of Caleb. In those dreams, he's always running across a field of tall grass under a sky full of stars. He turns back and waves, calling, "Mom, hurry up. You're going to miss it." I never ask what it is. I just run after him, laughing, the way we used to on autumn afternoons when the world felt wide and kind. And when I wake, I don't cry. I smile. Because I've learned that love doesn't end. It simply travels. It moves through time and distance, through mistakes and forgiveness, until it lands exactly where it belongs, in the hearts we heal, in the lives we rebuild, in the light we carry forward.